Hello, everyone. Welcome to this panel session. Today we're gonna talk some amazing topics that are it's most kind of awaited by everyone, right? It's the training within an enterprise environment. So we all know that when anyone in the world start thinking about HR and VR and XR, everybody thinks about training use cases. That is the most common use case for this technology. So we all know that we got millions and millions of professional people doing training inside their organization using this technology. So training, it's the king of use case for XR. And as we know, we're going to try in this session to answer some of the questions that most of you has got, right? Because we have been now all around for quite a number of years in this field. And you may have got lots of questions, how I'm going to do it? Or if you have done it, what is going to happen next? So today, with the 5 brilliant minds, we're going to try to help you. We're going to try to answer to you some of the key questions that you are facing today. So we're going to look at this end-to-end journey of applying XR technology within an enterprise. We're going to start from the early stage of designing, conceptualizing it, until running it, and then also what is going to happen next. And we're going to do this journey with, as I said, with 5 key minds here. And I'm going to introduce each of them because you're going to find out today they got really, really great stories to share with you. So I'm going to start with the top left of my screen is Kevin. So Kevin has begun his career with Delta as a part-time ramp agent more than 24 years ago. He also worked into the airport customer service learning, where he facilitated below wing operations and taught in more than 7 countries. Over 200 Delta stations, and he was responsible for opening more than 60 global stations. So welcome, Kevin, today. I'm so glad to have you. And then we got Paul on my right from ConocoPhillips. Paul, as you can see, he's a fantastic avatar. He designs and develops engaging, effective e-learning courses for any subject, such as technical training, soft skills, and software simulations. He started 20 years ago by creating a virtual reality art gallery for the University of Texas. Paul has built his career around focusing in emerging tech and applying that technology into training applications. So welcome, Paul. And then we got Walter from Aggreko. Walter has more than 10 years experience learning teams with focuses in learning content development, technology, and also innovation. Walter's primary focus in his company is developing and implementing new technologies to support skilling and developing talent for key roles across the whole organization. Walter, really glad to have you here as well. And then we got Cam from Bell Flight. Cam's primarily responsibility is to leverage emerging technology combined with the customer software to plan and execute creative solutions into the interactive, simulation, and XR space. Cam leads the team that is developing the look and feel of the future of flights, as well as how emerging technology can be leveraged across the whole organization. Welcome, Khan. And then finally, but not the less important one, is Mr. Brent. Brent has spent lots of years into Shell's. He drove Shell's aspiration to become the world-leading learning organization. Over his career, Brent led many Shell's most critical global transformation programs of this century. And now he turned his passion and experience to focus on shaping his thought leadership for Industry 5.0 and improved human connectivity. Brent, it's glad to have you here. So, guys, I think with those 5 people, I can talk here 8 hours, but unfortunately, we don't have 8 hours. We got 45 minutes, which, by the way, I already took 5 of them. So, who I am Frank. I'm CEO of Virtuoso, and my first involvement in virtual reality, it's since 1995. So I've seen everything in these pretty much, number of years, and I'm happy to share and moderate this talk today at the EWTS event. As I said, you're going to learn a lot because some of you has implemented VR, other are not done any XR program, so they're looking for lessons. So we're going to look, as I said, we're going to go through this journey from the beginning after to the future. And we're going to start this journey with Paul. As I said, Paul has got 20 years of pretty much experience in virtual reality, right? But his journey within ConocoPhillips, it's pretty new, right? I mean, I think it's like 1.5 years that you are into this journey. So you are relatively at the beginning of this journey, Paul. So I would like to start with you, if you can share with the audience here and tell us more about what are the key challenges that you are facing to start up a virtual reality program within your organization. So, thinking about who is going to be your customer, who's going to be your audience. So can you tell us this 1.5 year history, how you started and what are the challenges?
Okay. We've been dabbling in VR for probably 3 years now, and it's been very touch and go. Within that span of time, there has been a number of outside economic influences as well as pandemics that have thrown the I would say the company's focus onto very core business type issues rather than very, innovative or exploratory type things, which is where adopting VR training has fallen. Be that as it may, I have been party to a couple of proofs of concept / pilots that have been created, not fully funded yet, but created such that we have some VR sets, we have some software, we have people trying the applications that have been created, and there's been some enthusiasm, but the challenge has always been probably threefold. One being the proper use case. Like Frank mentioned, HR has a number of kind of built-in use cases, but I would say a company that's if you're going to find a reason to adopt something like this, it's going to be somewhere tied to the operational side of the business. It's going to have something to do with drilling oil. And that's been where the challenge has been, finding that drive to adopt something like this in a where attitudes of, well, if the existing training is working, then why do we need to push it to something else? Kind of attitudes. A second thing has been timing. I would say a very major issue has been timing. For instance, our most recent attempt to have a POC, it's proof of concept for people totally new to the world. We got our final proposal for what it would cost on the same day that we were sent home for COVID lockdown. This was a phenomenally bad day to get a bid that was twice as much as anybody was expecting to spend on this project. So timing has been an issue. And then the third thing is finding the right champion at a high enough level in the organization that would help back up the project when it ran into various snags, whether it's adoptance, is that a word? Whether it's adopting the project at sort of the ground level where it would be put in place, or anywhere in between. Finding that right person has also been a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, it's important. Those are three key things that you highlighted are vital to kick off. If you wish a program. You needed to have a champion, in your organization, on top of the fact that you needed to have a use case that prove soft, but also hard benefits, right? Then unfortunately, you were not lucky, in terms of the timing. Nobody expected, the pandemic, but I think you are in a stage that kind of picking up that again, right? In these days.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to count any chickens before they're hatched, but the coming months definitely look much better than the previous months.
That's cool. Thank you, Paul, for sharing these initial thoughts. We're gonna deep dive into some specific things later on. I wanna carry on the journey. So Paul told us what are the key experience, what are the key things that is facing, to kick off a pilot. Then I'm going to move into Kevin from Delta Airlines. So Kevin, instead, it's got more around 3 years into the journey. So a little bit more years than Paul in terms of, again, inside their organization, not on the personal level, of course. But one of the interesting things about Paul is that different from Paul, Kevin, when he started this VR program, he didn't know anything about VR, right? So, Kevin, can you tell us when you were faced to explore virtual reality inside your organization and you didn't have an experience? Can you tell us how brave you are, why you were so brave to actually take this on board, and don't be afraid to actually get it wrong. You were not afraid to did it without even getting a bonus, because you missed your target, or even worse, without actually be fired, essentially. You took the ball and you said, you know what, I'm going to make it happen, right? But that is a big, jump that you did. So can you tell us a little bit about that and where you are at, during your deployment of your program?
Yeah, thanks, Frank. Yes, it was a big undertaking, and just the story is I spent 19 years in ACS learning as a facilitator, as you mentioned, and held several other positions. And my last position 4 years ago in ACS Learning as a project manager, and we discussed virtual reality quite a bit, but nobody was brave enough to go ask for the money to do this, because it had never been done pretty much with an airline at that time, a domestic airline. They're just a challenge to bring virtuality in. And every time it was mentioned, it was, we thought it was just a lot of money. I mean, as you mentioned, I had no idea what virtuality was. I didn't know what it was going to cost. I didn't know what to expect in it. So I actually was brought over to work for the executive vice president for airport customer service. And our very first meeting on my very first day, she said, I was at a conference 2 weeks ago and they talked about virtuality. She said, so I'm going to task you with that. I want you to look into virtuality. I was like, okay. I had never even had a virtuality headset on. I knew nothing about it other than what I saw on commercials and on TV. So I started research. I went back to my desk. I researched a little bit. I found a local company in Atlanta that did virtuality. I filled out the online form on their site, just like anybody else would. I submitted it. Within 15 minutes, they were calling me saying, you're from Delta, right? So they were very interested. So we started talking about it. I went to their office. They put a headset on me for the first time. We did a little experiment. I absolutely was amazed how incredible virtuality could be. It got me excited. We put together a proof of concept, what they cost, which was very reasonable, I thought, considering what I had in mind. Brought it back to our executive vice president. She said, move forward with it. Let's see what we can do. 6 months later, we actually had the proof of concept in place and we're testing it. Very interesting because we were actually in a room at Delta, conference room, and we brought it in, was testing it, and we had her on the headset and we were showing it. And we had to keep shutting the door because people wanted to see what we were doing. At that time, our chief operating officer at the time walked by and poked his head in and said, what are you all doing in here? And we told him, he said, I want to look at it. So he looked at it and said, this is absolutely incredible. Why haven't we done this before? So just out of walking by, our chief operating officer for Delta absolutely loved it. So I had, as Paul said, I had the champion. I had the high level executives on board wanting to do this. So again, we put the proof of concept together. We started putting out in the stations. And then the next issue that we were running into is how are we going to test this in our stations? As you know, we have people, 80,000 employees all over the world. So we don't have them just in one place. So one of the tests that we did that we found very interesting, because we had to sit and say, we can't just take this to a station and say, put it on and see what you think, because we want to see if it improves their training, it improves their operations, their safety in the operations. So I sent a kind of an undercover facilitator from the training department to a station, a smaller station, and I had them observe the operation for 6 hours and take notes. And I had some notes for them to take and let us know what did they do that was not safe or it wasn't following procedures. So they made notes. Then the next day I went in with virtuality to the station and set it up and said, we just want to show it to you and see what you think. And there was only like 35 employees in this station that we used. I put all 35 employees through the virtuality training, proof of concept, and showed, and they all did it. They absolutely loved it. And then what I did is the next day, actually 2 days later, I sent another facilitator into the station and did another undercover operation and just watched from the concourse. They weren't outside. And they took notes of the same employees, and there was an improvement by over 100% improvement of safety and procedures that we noticed just by doing this 8-minute virtuality training or procedure, as a test. It actually stuck in their mind. Another quick story, and then I'll let you go. I don't want to take up too much time, but I had one agent come in. He had 40 years with the company. As a ramp agent, and he was from Tampa, Florida. He came in and did virtuality, and one of the procedures is when you're walking around the airplane, there's an air hose hooked to the airplane. A lot of you guys probably see it when you're flying. It's a big yellow hose, and it blows either air conditioning or heat into the airplane. One of our safety procedures is you're not supposed to step over that air hose. You're supposed to go around it because you could trip and fall over it, causing an accident. Well, everybody walks over it anyway. Well, in this procedure, if you step over it into virtuality, it will come up on the screen and tell you it's a safety hazard and you shouldn't do that. Well, the guy with 40 years stepped over it into virtuality and then said, oh, I didn't know that was a safety hazard. And he actually went back to the station, and 2 weeks later, he called me and he said, I just want you to know, I've been told this probably 1,000 times in training, not to step over that hose. but I haven't done it since that day, because every time I walk up that hose, I see that remark come up in the screen saying it's a safety hazard. Don't do that. So we finally got through to him.
Amazing, amazing. This is the conversation that we wanted to have today. It's share real stories, because we all know that virtual reality, AR, has got provided some really good soft and hard benefits. Right now, we are here to actually understand what is the stories behind it. Right, and we carry on these stories with Walter. Now, Paul and Kevin have been talking about VR kind of experiences. Walter, it's on the same kind of stage of Kevin. So it's around 3 years that he has been implemented programs, XR program in his organization. But differently from Kevin and Paul, Walter has been focusing more into AR versus VR. So again, Walter, so can you tell us your experience during these 3 years journey, highlighting some of the key elements, I don't know, such as design of the content, for example, or what's the option, insourcing versus outsourcing, and all these fascinating AR programs.
Sure. Yeah. So, I'll start with, I guess, just a little backgrounder of, I guess, our journey real quick. So, we started piloting this technology, knowing that we, having an initial use case that was built around self-paced learning. I guess for those of you who don't know Aggreko, what's sort of key for this to know is that we operate in over 80 plus countries. We do power generation. We have a lot of field service technicians, field service workforce. So we don't have a lot of people in any one place. And it is sometimes a challenge to get physical assets to people or people to physical assets. So what we were looking for was a way to sort of mitigate that, right? Offer a digital experience of what you would typically have physically, but bring it to you, if you would. And we saw sort of AR as a mechanism to do that. We started piloting in 2019. Actually, after piloting, we started building out our first, we could say, live use case to deploy last year, 2020, focusing on self-paced learning. So these were products that you could just put in front of you, full scale. So we even had equipment that was, 20 feet long, 10 feet high, and all the considerations that we had to do around that, also in content development, safety considerations, having enough space to work and place it and walk around, all the navigation, moving. We need you to move from this side of the object to the other side. Lots of considerations also that we went back and forth with during that self-paced. Then, March, then COVID hit, and we suddenly had to shift again, shift a little bit away from our original plans. And actually, I will say COVID definitely expedited adoption of the technology for us. It really put into focus the need to train people regardless of where they are and offer some kind of something closer to a human interaction type experience, something closer to reality, bringing digital replicas, if you would, to people in whatever fashion. And it also actually I'd say also definitely increased with these new use cases. Some of the use cases we're now building, which are like we build digital activities to complement virtual training, right? So we have instructors that deliver the virtual training, and instead of going to a learning center where they have all the physical alternator, the physical components, they can bring them into the classroom and say, here you go, launch that activity. I know everybody's got an alternator on their desk now, or they all have a board to do the recabling in, and we'll go through that together. And so we've offered that, and actually, last year, one of the use cases we're most proud of is we have a prerequisite to get onto any of our gas sites is that someone has a minimum of our entry-level gas certification, that how to safely work around gas equipment, gas piping, etc. And that assessment has always been face-to-face. It's always been a physical assessment. We have a simulation, physical simulation that's piping that will have leaks that someone has to physically troubleshoot. And we've replicated that into a augmented reality experience where an employee can place that object in their space and call an instructor in to view it as they view it. So they go through it together through the assessment. And there'll be a number of, it's an exact replica of our physical training. And it has a lot, I said, all those sort of same challenges throughout the simulation, troubleshooting leaks, finding, using different devices to find leaks, etc. So all those are built in, and actually that's allowed us to now certify people. And we have partners in the UK that we use, S-Gas and Logic, which actually now certify that gas safety program as being delivered virtually using augmented reality, which was a big stepping stone for us to get that, to still now be able to deliver that certification and deliver it in a new way. And actually, I'll even touch on ROI real quick on that one. So even just on that program, we save over $7,000 every time we run it. And that certification program, and it's over, actually, I had to recalculate. I just heard that my calculation was too conservative on our carbon savings, and had to up it. But we're also reducing our carbon footprint, which is important for us. We have a big focus on the energy transition, reducing our carbon footprint, et cetera. And we save over 6,000 pounds of carbon just by reducing, like I said, reducing some of those activities, bringing it digitally, et cetera. So those are, like I said, so those are, I think, some of the experiences we're looking at, some of the returns we've had. As we've gone through this journey, I think, so we've been mingling. I think one of the challenges we've had is insource, outsource. Do we hire someone internally? Can we find the right skill set? It is a fairly difficult skill set to find, someone that has both the 3D and creative, et cetera, and then also instructional design experience. Tends to be a bit of a unicorn. But we've dabbled a little back and forth. We are using a solution that will allow us to author internally. We have that option, but we've been leveraging our external partners just because that also has allowed us, especially last year at the beginning of COVID, when we had to do a lot, it's allowed us to ramp up quickly, right? So having that external partner on the creation specifically has just allowed us to, like I said, adapt and grow at a larger scale than we would have been accustomed to. And I would say they brought some of the advantages that we had with bringing in, leveraging an external partner were, especially as we started with self-paced, we had our mindset on that. We had standards, we were going to structure them all like this. We already had sort of a game plan. And then we threw that wrench in like, oh no, it's an activity and it's a certification. The partner really helped us to work through that and bring some new ideas into how can we address this and address it quickly, and probably a lot quicker than we could have done necessarily on our own. So I mean, like I said, we still currently leverage that external partnership where we outsource the majority of our content experience, our content and development. The pieces that we have internally are just some of the 3D design. We get some of our stuff still from engineering, and then depending on the volume or et cetera, the amount of content we're getting from our engineers, then that determines, hey, we're going to need more help, more heavy lifting, or it's something that we can more or less drag and drop, stop authoring ourselves, et cetera.
Amazing, Walter. I mean, it's the fact that you also managed to certify those programs, really show how the scale of the deployment, of this technology within your company, So it's starting with the proof of concept up to roll out at scale, with the certification behind it. So that is really amazing. And I want to ask more things, later, but I get back to you because I know that you got some really good stories on some specific topics as well. Thank you, Walter. We carry on the journey with Cam from Bell Flight. So Cam has got inside the organization even around 4 years of experience, but of course, from a personal point of experience, he's got more than 4 years in VR. So as we said at the beginning, Cam it's living, I think, a dream job, right? Because it's doing a cool stuff with Bell flight, all the kind of futuristic, not what we can fix today, but what is going to happen in the future. So, can you tell us more information about instead what type of VR kind of applications you do and you create, and how you work internally? Because I believe that your team provide these kind of services inside the organization, so your clients are internal people as well. So what you do and what are the dynamics inside the organization?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Frank. So really the main start of my story at Bell was coming over from Bell being my main client when I worked at a digital agency. So I'm fortunate in that I've seen both sides of that interaction. And to your point, now that I work at Bell and almost work as a service organization to uncovering and executing on trying to find new and innovative ways to deploy hardware and software, there have been a lot of different challenges from each side that we can definitely dig into in this talk in the future. But as far as what we're doing on a day-to-day, it's interesting because we're just now recently getting into training. And I think some of that may relate to the FAA certifications. There's a lot of very high hoops to jump through when we get into training, certification, all that good stuff. But interestingly enough, Bell started probably 5+ years ago with a few different more storytelling marketing pieces in both AR and VR, letting you take flights on the V280, an aircraft that at that point in time we just had a mock-up of. So would you rather send a large mock-up around to trade shows or send a VR headset type thing? And that was really the first encounter that Bell had. And once the storytelling aspect went well from that sense, and we incorporated it into the air taxi and a few other ideas, then it evolved into VR in design. So if anyone's not heard of the FCX1, there's a use case out there from Bell and the digital agency where I was at, Sector 5. And essentially that entire story, we partnered with HTC around how you're going to design aircraft in the future. And we brought a concept from sketch to full-size mock-up in a very quick span of time, essentially replacing the whole phase of building bucks with 2x4 pieces of wood and making it all virtual and getting that real-time feedback for our designers. So once the design use case was proven out, we then went into a few other things like telepresence. At CES a few years back, we actually had a headset set up within our lab that we use so that folks who were not able to get to CES and see the Bell booth could still swing by and put on the headset and walk around it virtually. And we had drones. This was a pretty cool aspect of it. We had drones that we were controlling autonomously. So they had all the schedule and they were deconflicting in real time. But the coolest part of that is that they were feeding back their telemetry data. So we were able to have people walk around the virtual CES show floor, but also see the drones in real time flying around them in the show floor, just as the people were within our mock-up city. So that was a really neat use case as well, that then took us further into more kind of HCI type designing UI UX for interacting with aircraft. How can we make that more intuitive, and designing, especially using augmented reality, more intuitive ways for you to not always have to be staring at a screen, especially in environments where rotor blades could be spinning, And then lastly, I'll speak to the trainings, which is the bread and butter of this talk. Which were, as I said, probably the newest avenue for us, is we're working with the manufacturing team within Bell to do virtual reality, more classroom style training before anyone has to put their hands on a part or a component, and then also augmented reality training to enhance the process of laying up a composite or replacing a different piece of a rotor blade. And that's more of the enhancing of someone who's already gotten the base skill sets down. And that's been really fascinating to see the difference in how those two technologies are deployed. And then we're also working with some pre-flight checklists where you can essentially, in a few different places, one of them in Europe, we have a full Bell training facility, but we don't have certain aircraft that can be there all the time. So we've created a virtual environment where You go through every single pre-flight checklist step in the VR environment. You can teleport around. It highlights the different components and explains to you what you should or shouldn't be doing at that point in time. And then the last one that I'll touch on very briefly, but is probably my favorite project, is what's called feature flight controls. And that project evolved from a heavily modified X-plane build into an Unreal Engine front-end build with FAA certified flight control laws controlling what you see in the game engine, to now it's this 8K headset integrated VR motion-based enabled flight sim, looking at doing pilot stress level tracking and monitoring so that we can reduce workload on pilots, cabin configuration, all that good stuff, especially things like foveated rendering. As all that tech starts to release, we're integrating that as soon as we can get our hands on it. So a lot of really fun stuff that we can dig into. Absolutely.
Oh man, I mean, you see, dear audience, you see here that we really could spend the entire EWTS event to talk with those guys. By the way, please use the Q&A chat box to write your questions, because then we're gonna try to answer all of your questions later. But what is gonna happen next, right? We have heard the beginning of the journey. We have seen companies that is using VR, AR at scale, and we are seeing also, with CAM, some kind of futuristic type of VR simulation. I want to finish with Brent about this, because Brent has seen all of this in his shell, right, in his long career, and now he's looking at, let's say, the next stage of applications, of this technology. So, Brent, what is going to happen next? I mean, what is this industry 5.0? So we are doing cool stuff. We are doing cool stuff, but what is going to happen next, Brent, in an enterprise?
Thanks, Frank. So I've been a firm believer in VR and immersive technologies for years. I started with military aviation and operational training with VR. So the fundamentals I firmly believe in, the things we've talked around here, procedures, showing people orientation, high-risk tasks, things that are hard and costly to replicate in the real world. Fundamentals for me, the future and what I see the opportunity is, we are moving into this industry 5.0, where we're really shifting our workforce from an era of competence development, so on skills, bundles of skills, to more worker autonomy. And we're going towards autonomy because many demographic shifts and work shifts. So one of the shifts, for example, is humans want more. They want more fulfillment in their roles. They want more self-efficacy, their confidence in being able to do tasks that are contributing to the company, to society, to their own development, because they want employability. They're seeing, once fearful of automation, it was going to take their job. And quite honestly, industry has invested in automation to get automation smarter, but we really focused on automation for rote, kind of simple, repetitive, tedious tasks. We're going to start an era where there's going to be collaborative robotics, okay? And so what I see is the human element of work is going to shift to humans that aren't so procedurally driven or, lockstep driven into tasks, because that stuff should be automated, data analysis collected and automated and digitized. And what we want to capture off of the human is human intellect, human creativity, and human social collaboration, because those are the things that Industry 5 is delivering to more of a social network stakeholder population, because the consumer demands are changing to more mass personalization of industry and customization of products for a wider variety of stakeholders as we reduce emissions, reduce and eliminate waste, go into more global causes. So all those kinds of things. So when we take VR and we look at automation, for example, we're seeing a new connected worker emerge. So biomechanical workers. So these are ones that are working with biomechanics to help their movement and their action. Augmented workers. So they're using augmented reality to help them see things from the physical and the digital world combined. We're seeing virtual workers where they're using VR to help learn how to do things, but be very immersed in how to see things. So instead of just seeing a schematic of a turbine or something and seeing the pieces fall apart, they can actually do more critical thinking with that, more computational thinking, and bring in data, et cetera, from the Internet of Things. So it's that emerging connection between the world of work and the world of learning into the flow of work. So we want this collaborative technology of VR and AR to help these things. And you're going to have healthy workers with wearables. We're going to have to train them how to be comfortable and confident with those, just like our smarter workers, because they're going to have personal assistants. So again, we've got to create a whole new generation of workers that are confident, and they're using VR in their everyday life and AR in the flow of their work. And they're using it because they're choosing to use it. And it's going to be a bit of a shift from this older adage of learn by doing, which is great. And that's the best way to learn. But because there's so much coming at people, we want them to start learn by doing, but choosing, because it's more relevant to them, it's more timely to them, and they see the direct impact of that learning or time on their outcomes and in their own impact. So people today at work are really trying to build their personal brand, and they want to spend their time and attention, which is very limited, on things that are going to help them build their social networks, build their brain power, their smarts, and build their ability to contribute to the organization in more innovative ways. So again, all of these things are going to go on, and we're going to use these technologies not just to learn, but again, the social worker is going to be using VR, AR, et cetera, to interact between operators and between the Internet of Things. They're going to have the collaborative worker that's going to be working in collaboration with technologies. So the next era is really this era of moving from what I call a static or somewhat dynamic level of competence, where I give management a level of assurance that these people were trained to do the task, to I'm giving management a level of confidence that the worker's more autonomous in working in a connected environment, meaning they're feeling freer to execute with limits of authority. They're easier at analyzing incoming data to make decisions, to troubleshoot, to solve problems, those kind of things. And they're freer to collaborate either synchronously or asynchronously, and then also then to build their knowledge, put their net promoter score out there, and to know when and when not to escalate, and how to escalate, and how to document digitally escalation. So we're entering this entirely new work world where we've got to start getting ready for it, or it's going to start to sneak up on us too fast. So we just can't keep up with AR, VR is good for procedural tasks and schematics and structures and showing people 1, 2, 3 and orientation and kind of getting them to do those things. It's much more emotionally stimulating and intellectually stimulating that gets to the heart of the worker and why they're at work and why they believe they're working for that company and what's the exchange between their time and their growth. So over to you, Frank.
Amazing.
Thanks.
Amazing. I mean, this is a really fascinating, topic as well, because you don't talk about one single line of competencies in one organization, but actually it's an holistic approach, for this human performance experience, in other words, right? So just a quick question. I mean, I know we don't have too much time, but Brent, how long is going to take to get us there?
It's just like everything in this digital age. We started Industry 4.0 in 2011. And as one of our, I think Paul had said, for the last 10 years, we've been doing a series of proof of concepts to say, gee, this makes sense and this use case can work in our company. Then we've been doing pilots to scale. And a lot of companies are, pioneers, early adopters, late adopters, and laggards. And I think right now we're starting to get critical mass in industry that, I think it's 70 or 65% of all major industries have a level of connected worker. So I think as we get more tipping point mass, we're going to start to see the leading progressive companies saying, I can use these technologies to make my workers not just more skilled, but more confident and more willing to be psychologically at risk to make a decision, to go out on their own, to put out their learnings and their thinking.
Absolutely.
And again, remember, we're entering the age that what we want humans to do is to collaborate socially, to innovate, to be creative, using all this Internet of Things data to be innovative, and to use their intellectual skills to augment what the automation's doing. So automation without human intellect is going to be, short-lived.
Absolutely. So doing the reverse journey, if you wish, quick, 60 seconds. You do a great job, but then I think you spend also time in educating and demos technology within your organization, right? So can you tell us a little bit about that kind of behind the scenes of the cool stuff that you do?
Absolutely. And that's one of the interesting things is coming from, so I'll say from the agency side and being seen often as almost always that sales guy. There's always this question of, does this person have my best intention at heart? Or now that I'm an internal employee at Bell, I think that question has gone away a lot. So it's not as much of a question anymore. We're all in the same team. And I think that we're in an interesting place where most folks I feel like have either seen of or worked with VR, AR at some point. And it's kind of lost the novelty factor of it's so cool, we ought to do it. And now it's about substance and what is the return on investment that this is going to give to us? Otherwise, why would we invest here instead of there? And I think a lot of it is trying to show that there is data behind a lot of these experiences that indicate a strong return on investment, which you can chalk up to time. Really, everything at the end of the day is about how do you save time? How do you make it more efficient and safer? So I think a lot of it is just about getting the word out and educating others on it's not a gimmick, it's not going away, and it's just going to get more impactful.
Yeah, absolutely. And Walter, 60 seconds to you as well. You started pretty much, over 3 years ago. But when you started, did you plan at the beginning what you were going to do, or you just focus on the pilot and then we'll see what we're going?
So I mean, quickly, we did start with a longer term plan. So knowing that we're going to start with knowledge, building up our library, and our goal is then to shift from learning in the moment, sort of standalone, to performance support in the field. So us seeing augmented reality as then transitioning from training to on equipment, right? But we were going to very intentionally start with training, build that library, build those models, a lot of those same processes, et cetera, being in the field as well. So yeah, we did have a multi-year plan, which I think helped us then, have that shining star, that North Star, if you would, we know where we're heading, we know why we're heading there, and we know what that, what that opportunity is at the end of this road.
That's great, thank you. And Kevin, 60 seconds to you can you tell us a little bit, what are the KPIs that right now you are looking to get from your programs at this stage?
The KPIs I think we're looking to get from what we started is mainly around safety. That's the top priority is the safety of the employees, and especially the new hires. The new hires are put in a dangerous environment with classroom training and very little hands-on. And as you know, it's very hard to train out there and slow the airplanes down. If airplanes are not in the air, they're not making money. So when airplanes are on the ground, they're on the ground for 30 minutes, 40 minutes at the most. It's a very fast-paced world. And we're trying to still train people how to move around the airplane with engines running, as Cam said, propellers moving. We don't have propellers for Delta, but still engines running and things happening. And with the virtual reality, it will allow them to really kind of feel for it. I mean, one example was I had a new hire doing it. We had the headset with the sound, the engine's running in the background. He asked me, he said, "Can I turn the sound off? It's very distracting." I said, "No." we have sound in the real world, so that's why we have the sound there. It's very distracting. It's very overwhelming. Yeah, safety is our number one priority.
Yeah, I mean, this is not an e-learning that you can switch off the sound from your laptop. No,
Exactly.
It's a much more immersive thing. And Paul, you started the journey, but just can you tell us in the next 6 seconds, what are the use cases that you are developing within ConocoPhillips? They
also revolve around safety. Those are going to be our biggest bang for our buck in terms of making an impact on the organization and impressing the decision makers into wanting to spend money to correct these highly correctable problems. Like was already mentioned, the idea of taking relatively new people and putting them in these dangerous positions or infrequently occurring positions and say, you got to get it right the first time. It happens all the time, but I think we can probably do better. And so that would be where we would look first is safety. There's an initiative right now looking at hand safety. I'm very enthusiastic about that. Get some hand tracking in there and get some of these like lopped off in virtual reality. And I think that would really stick with our students if they saw their virtual fingers flop off into the virtual sunset.
Amazing. Well, guys, as I said, what can I tell you? 45 minutes, it's 1 second, in this topic. But now we're gonna spend the next 10 minutes to actually answer live the audience questions. Okay, so I believe we already got lots of questions. So this is the first part, and now we're gonna go live to answer your questions. Until then, I wanted to thank everyone, for your sharing your stories. And let's move into a live mode so we can answer your questions. Thank you.